welcome to the Sleep When I'm Dead book club pre-recorded book discussion with the author. It's really funny because none of my book club members know this is happening except like a few selected people. So it's going to be a little bit of a surprise, but welcome. As you can tell, I have Lena, which everyone should know who Lena is because she's been on the book club quite a bit, but we have the author of the October book club pick, which is The Spare Room by Andrea Bartz. So thank you so much for being here, Andrea, or Andy, sorry. But yeah, do you want to give us like a brief introduction about yourself and before the interview?
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for inviting me on. I mean, most importantly, thank you so much for reading The Spare Room. It's just the best feeling to, you write these books alone in a room and you really hope that someday they're going to like spark discussions and, bring out opinions and challenge people and get them to think about things differently. So there is nothing more exciting than a group of people reading and discussing. So thank you so much. In terms of my own introduction, I'm the author of The Spare Room. It is my fourth book. My first three are called The Lost Night and The Herd. My third was called We Were Never Here. And that one was a Reese's Book Club pick, which was really fun. And this was my follow-up to it. They're all standalone, totally different characters, different stories. What else? I used to be a magazine editor. Now I write novels full-time. I live in Brooklyn and the Hudson Valley. And I'm just really honored to be talking about the book with you guys. And so grateful that all of you read it and took the time to, of all the things you could be doing with your time, you are doing this. And that's so cool and just mind-blowing to me. So thank you.
Of course. And then Lena, let's hear a little intro from you.
My name is Lena. My channel on YouTube is Lena's Bookshelf. That's also my Instagram. I read mainly thrillers and historical fiction, but I also dabble in some true crime and some memoirs. And I also really enjoy like psychology nonfiction. And I was a co-host with Jesse in January when we read the Lucinda Berry book. And so I'm excited to be participating in the book club again with this. So yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. And if anyone doesn't know who I am, my name's Jessie. My channel on Instagram and here on YouTube is Read with Jess. I mostly read thrillers. That is like my pride and joy. And then I dabble into romance as well. And I felt like this one had the best of both worlds. So I'm very excited to get into that. But yeah, thank you so much for both of you for coming in and, taking spare time. We'll go ahead and just jump into the interview questions. So my first question is, what are you currently reading?
Yeah, right now I'm reading Angie Kim's latest, which is called Happiness Falls. Yeah. And it's great. It's fantastic. It's really interesting because it's being marketed as kind of a thriller, but I feel like it's really more of like, it's kind of like Celeste Ng. It's more like this family story that has a mystery element because it's about a missing person. This family's dad disappears, and the only person who really knows what's going on is the nonverbal autistic son. And there are twists and surprises, but it's not a traditional mystery at all. It's much more this meditation on, communication and identity and family, and it's really great. I'm enjoying it. So I recommend that, even though it's a little bit of like an edge case in the thriller genre that you both love.
Yeah, I read that one last month.
Oh, good. Did you like it?
I did, yeah. I loved her first one, Miracle Creek. I love that book.
Me too.
When she said Angie Kim, I was like, oh, Lena loves Miracle Creek. So this is great.
Yeah, no, me too. I think Miracle Creek was like a little bit more, it was more of a literary mystery. It's sort of like this sort of whodunit where you kept circling in on this central mystery. And this one's, different. I was a little like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, but she's brilliant and a great writer. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, my turn for the question. Sorry. Okay. What is something that not many people know about you?
This one I had to think about because I'm so public and I like live my whole life online. A lot of people don't know that Well, a lot of people do know that I'm from Wisconsin, but a lot of people don't know that my dad grew up on a farm. So I've like spent some time on a dairy farm, and the family still makes maple syrup too. So like I've helped make maple syrup from the time I was little. It was one of my favorite like memories every year as a kid, going out and helping collect all the buckets of sap and boiling them down to maple syrup. And so that's sort of a random thing that not that many people know.
No, I love that. I was actually like, one of my personal questions I was going to ask you is like, have you ever lived in Virginia? Because there were so many things. I was like Tanglewood Estates. Like there's actually a section in my city called Tanglewood. And then there was like a few other things. Like I was like, is she from my city? Because this is like very weird.
Wait, are you from Virginia? Are you in
Yeah.
Virginia?
Yeah, we're
Oh.
actually both from Virginia.
Oh, funny. So
Yeah.
what happened was, so I have not spent much time in Virginia at all, but during the pandemic, I did move in with, and no spoiler, there was no throuple, there were no missing people. I did move in with a friend from high school and her husband and their kid for what I thought would just be like a few weeks of getting out of my studio. And then I ended up living there for almost 5 months. But they were in the DC suburbs in Maryland. And there was just one point that we were driving. It was the fall by the time I was leaving, and we drove to this outdoor haunted house, haunted forest thing. Maybe you guys even know where that is. But on the way, we passed these areas that apparently a bunch of diplomats live in. And there were these crazy mansions just peeking out over the top of like big permanent gates and fences and stuff. So when I was just trying to think of a certain setting, that's kind of what I was picturing. But no, I grew up in the suburbs of Milwaukee, and there was a street in my neighborhood called Tanglewood. And so it was just named after that. I think there's Tanglewood's probably all over.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I actually have a mall. Like we have two malls, and one of them is Tanglewood. And I was like, what? No, there's no way she like lives in the same city. There's no way. Or like maybe she's from there. So I just had to ask. I was like, interesting.
I actually did not know that there is a Tanglewood in Virginia. So this is news to me.
Yeah, it's like, so I'm in like Roanoke, but there's like multiple different areas, and Tanglewood's like kind of like the ritzy area. And I was like, I wonder.
That's ritzy, right? Like even in my little neighborhood in the suburbs, like that one street was all the big houses. So that's probably what I was thinking.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I was just like, I have to ask her if she's from here. Like, I won't put that on there, but I just had to ask. So when did you decide that you wanted to be a writer?
So it's interesting. I always loved writing from the time I was a kid, and always loved creative writing. And then in college, I was a journalism major, and I discovered magazine journalism, and I freaking loved it. So like from the beginning, once I got to college, I was like, I'm going to be a magazine editor. Like forget everything else I ever thought I wanted to be. At some point I wanted to be a marine biologist, like everyone, like all the other stuff was like, forget it. I'm going to be a magazine editor. And so then I moved to New York and I did it. I worked as an editor for about 8 years. And towards the end of it, I just kept, magazines are not a terribly stable industry to work in. And so they kept folding while I was working there, and I'd get laid off, and then I would freelance for a bit, and then I'd find a new job and, move on to the next. And eventually I was like, I need something that is my own thing, that it feels like it's mine, and it feels like it's my project, and it feels like I can't just like go into work one day on a random Tuesday and just find out that like it's all over, which is what kept happening with magazines. So that was when I started working on what eventually became my debut, The Lost Night. But then not long after it came out, I went home and I was going through all these old like notebooks and sort of like workbooky things I had as a kid. And one of them was a blank notebook, but inside the front cover, there was this list that you were supposed to fill out that was like, name, age, grade, best friend, favorite food, like all these sort of just the little questionnaire. And it said what I want to be when I grow up. And I said author. So I guess I went full circle where I ended up where I started, with wanting to be a writer.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's
It's
awesome.
like, oh, little Andy, how cute.
Yeah, fulfilling your childhood self.
Right?
That's awesome. So tell us what a typical day looks like as an author.
Yeah. So it sort of depends on it really depends on where I am in the cycle for any particular book. So right now I am working hard on writing the next book. And so when I'm in writing mode, I get up, I have a cup of, my girlfriend brings me my coffee in bed, and I somehow waste time on my phone and slowly wake up. And then I have a word count goal that I try to reach every day, which sort of varies depending on how ahead or behind I am on where I should be in the manuscript. Um, but I sit down in my office and I'll do like writing sprints in order to do it. I use the Pomodoro method. So I set a timer for 20 minutes, and for 20 minutes I write, even if it's really bad, even if I don't know what's happening in this scene, anything like that. And then the timer goes off and I take a break. And then ideally, sometimes I make the mistake of looking at my phone and then a bunch of time passes. But ideally, then I like keep repeating the cycle until I have hit the right number of words. So I devote probably about half the day to writing. And then the other half of the day is like all of the other business of being an author, so I didn't really realize how little of it was the writing. So it's answering emails, it's, reading other people's books so that I'm ready to interview them or do an event with them or something like that. It's, I don't know, being on social media, making stuff in Canva, like just all this kind of random various stuff, scheduling, working on scheduling events or doing stuff like this. So yeah, and then I do a little bit of freelance writing as well, and that takes up part of the day. And I try to keep pretty much like 9 to 5 hours because that's when my girlfriend works and we both work from home. So it's like that point we're both in our own corners of the apartment working, and then we can sort of have an evening together. So I don't know about most days, but at least a few times a week we go climbing together. We'll do rock climbing and make dinner, and yeah, we're pretty boring.
No, not boring at all. I love that. I love that you also set boundaries of like 9 to 5 and stuff like that to like.
Yeah, I try. There's some exceptions, but it's good to have an end of the day when you're self-employed.
Yeah.
Right.
My next question, I'm actually going to add on to it. Do you have any interesting writing quirks, and would you consider yourself a plotter or a pantser?
Yeah, I love that question. I am almost entirely a pantser.
Okay.
I write without an outline, which is chaos. And I wish it weren't the case. And like with every book, I'm like, this is the one that I'm going to plot from the beginning. Like, this is the one where I'm going to make an outline. I'm going to make myself a plotter. And then I just can't do it. The way that I figure out the story is by writing the first draft. And so I just need to accept that and embrace it, I guess. But it is very frustrating while I'm in the process of it. So I don't know if this is considered quirky, but I definitely have, moments when I'm writing where I can sense that a twist is coming, a twist or a reveal or just something that's going to kind of change the story. I can sense that it's coming, and I know sort of the structure that the book needs to take. So often I even know like, okay, I'm like 5,000 words out from like the next big thing. But I still don't know what it is until I'm actually writing it. And so I'm like gasping as I'm writing, and I'm like, what the? So that is the very fun part of pantsing, where like you kind of have the experience of a reader, hopefully, of being totally shocked by what is going on in this story. But it just means tons of doubt and many nights of just lying in bed and staring at the ceiling and being like, I'm never going to be able to land all these planes that I have launched into the air, and my career is over, and I'm going to have to pay back the advance, and they'll never let me write again, and they'll take away my keyboard, and that'll be the end of it. That's sort of the spirals that I go into. Which I think, from what I hear, every author does some of that. So I don't think that's even that much of a quirk.
No, I love that you like find the reveal I guess like in the first draft, you find the reveal along with us as a reader too, as well.
Yeah, it's almost like the story does it itself. Like the story reveals itself to you.
Yeah. It's sort of like it exists, and I'm like peeling back the layers to actually get to it. And like, yeah, sometimes I have to go back. There's usually a few little things I need to change earlier in order to make that really work and land and make sense or be appropriately seated or whatever. But most of the time, it is like pretty eerie how my subconscious has been like leading towards this all along, and I just didn't consciously have any idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that answer. And I also kudos to you for pantsing, because I feel like I could never.
You say that, but I don't know. I'm so jealous of people who can like sit down and like work out the story and have it
Yeah.
make sense and come together. I just, that kind of blank page I can't do.
All right. The next question is, what do you like to do when you're not writing? I know you spoke to it a little bit when you talked about your day, but
Yeah. So I am pretty into rock climbing. I do, I belong to a gym here, do that. But also have gotten more into outdoor rock climbing with lots of ropes and safety measures. My, parents get so nervous every time I even mention this. But yeah, it's like kind of addictive. It's like a very different way. I mean, I always loved like nature and hiking and everything, but in the last few years, I've gotten into outdoor climbing, and it's such a different way of like engaging with nature. And you have this like clear goal, and the views from the top are just incredible and not like even anything you see hiking. So it's just kind of addictive. And it's been a big hobby of mine the last few years. I like cooking. I really like traveling. I'm lucky because my partner also works remotely and also loves travel. So we're actually going to Spain tomorrow. Yeah, which is why I was like, we got to get this interview in. But
Yeah.
yeah, we love taking trips. And what else? I have a really cute cat, and she has a really cute dog. So we like hanging out with them. And I got into crocheting during the pandemic when we were all just trying to find things to do to keep busy. Yeah. It's very soothing and a great thing to do while watching TV. So that's another one that seemed really intimidating. And then I learned like it's just figuring out emotion and then repeating it a billion times. So
Yeah.
I cannot crochet. I can knit, but I never got the hang of crocheting. I think the whole one hand thing, at least with knitting, you're using two hands. I don't know.
Yeah, knitting is so intimidating to me for that reason. You have to do both hands. I'm like, absolutely no way. Like, like playing piano, like I badly play piano, and that's another one. I'm learning guitar, which is very fun. But like I can do when one hand only has to strum, I'm fine. But as soon as I'm supposed to like finger pick or like keep a different rhythm or use different fingers, like my brain is like, nope, we do everything one at a time.
That's awesome. So many hobbies. I love that. And I actually did a little bit of rock climbing before the pandemic, and then I was just like, oh, well, never mind. So
yeah. Well, look, the gyms are back open. So now would be a great time.
Yeah, I started in Colorado Springs because there's so much stuff to do out there. And I know Lena's been out there quite a bit, but then I just got into reading. So I think
yeah, I didn't even mention reading. Like my whole life is books. I figured that was a given. But
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So out of all the books you've written, or even the ones that you may have not published, which one is like your favorite character that you've ever written about, and why?
That is such a hard question because I love it's probably one of my narrators. I love all of my narrators because I spend the most time in their head. I always write in first person. And I really, really love, I want to call her Kelly, which is the name of my next, Kelly, right? Okay. My next book has a different narrator. I was just working on it, and I was like, don't say the wrong name. I really love Kelly because a lot of her journey echoes my own. Again, not the dark stuff, hopefully not the like sort of so crazy in love. She's very a little bit too trusting and oblivious and all that stuff like that. Hopefully doesn't overlap, but yeah, just this journey of starting out thinking she wants the sort of heteronormative ideal of this husband and the 2.5 kids and the minivan and all that, and just assuming that that's what her life is going to look like. And then sort of through the crucible of the pandemic, through being trapped inside with her thoughts and all the quiet and just sort of waking up from this trance of busyness, she sort of gets in touch with her more authentic self and realizes, that all these things she assumed to be true about herself weren't necessarily coming from inside and were sort of coming in from the outside. And it very much echoed my journey. I met my partner while I was in the suburbs of DC, and had always identified as straight before that. And I don't think without all of that time and space and solitude that I would have, I would have had the courage to sort of come out and live authentically. So I really, I don't know, love her and feel tenderly toward her for that. But I think probably the one I sort of who has the most sort of tender spot in my heart. It's the narrator from The Lost Night, my debut. Her name is Lindsay, and the book is sort of a whodunit murder mystery that's set in the like warehouse parties of Brooklyn in 2008. Between, she's like, it starts 10 years later, but she was like 23 and partying like crazy with all like the hipsters and stuff. And she is looking back on this time when she like drank too much and partied really hard. And that was sort of her whole identity and her self-medicating. And as a result, there's like sort of gaps in her memory. And that has to do with the mystery where she can't remember exactly what happened the night that her best friend died. And so she's trying to solve the mystery. But I just put so much of my own, my cat desperately wants to get in. Okay. She was like on the door, literally like her hind legs, like, let me in.
Oh.
But now that the door is shut, she's gonna want to go and she's gonna do this again.
Right.
I put so much of sort of that shame and self-judgment over my younger self into it, and part of the journey of Lindsay kind of coming to terms with that and forgiving herself for mistakes she's made in the past. Like writing that was quite healing for myself as well, I think. So as a result, I have a really tender place in my heart for her. But it's interesting because those are probably my two characters that are like the most unlikable according to according to some readers who tag me in their reviews informing me of that.
Oh. No, oh my gosh.
And they're, I don't know, I like just being really honest about the stuff that women aren't supposed to talk about, right? Like anger and the shame and the pressure to live a certain life and look a certain way. And, in The Lost Night, Lindsay is 33 and single and hasn't had a serious relationship. And that was not exactly my experience, but like pretty aligned. And she feels a lot of shame over that and what's wrong with me and why haven't I been picked? And I don't know, it was real raw and it was real. And there's always going to be readers who don't feel comfortable with that level of, rawness. But I can't tell a story any other way. Like I don't know how to write a book that is purely about a likable woman, who through none of her own doing, who's a total saint and a wonderful, perfect person, and through none of her own doing ends up in a perilous situation. Like I don't know how to put myself in that mindset. So here we are with my messy women.
Oh my gosh.
Perfect woman would make for a boring book anyway.
Right,
exactly. I mean, who wants to read about a perfect woman? Like give me my hot messes.
Right. Love that.
If you weren't an author, what do you think you'd be doing instead?
I like honestly don't have any skills other than writing. Like people ask me that and I'm like, writing in like screenwriter, maybe? I don't know. It feels like all of my sort of professional skills are wrapped up in writing, which is a little scary to not be super diversified. But I like to think that, maybe I'd be using communication in another way, like whether it is writing for the screen or whether it is, I don't know, like marketing and getting ideas across, or whether it would be something having to do with like social justice and communications. Like I feel passionate about that stuff. So, sadly, it's like something adjacent to what I actually do.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad that's what you want to do, and everything else that you already do kind of coincides of it. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, very lucky.
So after you publish a book, do you do anything special to like treat yourself? Is it the trip to Spain? Because that's amazing. I would love to do that every time.
So this trip to Spain is really more for fun. But there's always, I mean, I love the process after a book comes out of like having book events in person, especially, and being able to celebrate with people because, you know, like I was saying, I think before you started recording, it's like you spend all this time writing a book and then suddenly you get to be an author and like interact with other people. And I just love that part of it. So, you know, I got to do it for The Lost Night, my debut, which came out in 2019, but then The Herd came out in March 2020. And that was such a bummer. Ironically, it's a whodunit that's set in a like bougie all-female co-working space. So it was all about like the workplace, and it came out right when nobody could be around other people, period. And then even We Were Never Here, it came out in August 2021, but I still couldn't my publisher didn't want me to do events because we were still more so in COVID. So it was really thrilling with this book to be able to like go to a bookstore and celebrate with people. So yeah, I really love that element of it. And then a few weeks, I mean, you mentioned Spain, but a few weeks after the book comes out, I try to schedule a trip during which I won't be like looking at my phone, because the first few weeks, it feels like everything is riding on this. Every email could be devastating news, or it could be amazing news that completely changes your life. And, you know, I'm like checking my sales numbers and like wondering why they aren't higher or lower, what's going on, and just sort of feeling, you know, comparing myself to other books that come out around the same time. So it's really great to have a trip where it's just like, you know, all day I'm plugged out of that, and I sort of like detox so that when I come home, it's a little bit less of a knee jerk, like, gotta check, gotta, you know, refresh, gotta do all that.
So, well, congrats. I mean, I'm glad you're going to treat yourself. That's amazing.
Thank you. I think everyone needs to like celebrate, you know, even though it's like there's highs and lows to it, and there's, you know, parts of publication day that are not as, you know, beautiful and perfect as we want to imagine, but I still think it's really important to celebrate the wins. I don't know. How do you guys celebrate your personal wins?
Probably buying a new book.
It's great. As an author, I fully endorse.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. I like to treat myself to that. And I'm sure Lena also feels the same way. So
yeah, treat myself to books. I also I like crumble cookies, so I always want an excuse to buy a crumble cookie. So like if I've had a great day, crumble cookie. If I've had a bad day, crumble cookie.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. They are all purpose.
Yeah. Fortunately, I don't have a crumble cookie, so I can't celebrate like Lena's.
Mine is a half an hour away, but the one in my town is opening on Friday, so I won't have to drive 30 minutes anymore.
You'll have to celebrate with a crumble cookie.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Perfect excuse to get it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So your sister is also a published author. So what is that like?
Yeah, it's super cool. So her debut, The Writing Retreat, came out in February of this year. It's great. It's also dark, kind of sexy, twisted thriller. And we've just both always been each other's biggest advocates. I mean, we grew up in a house completely filled with books. We used to write stories together and, you know, sit at a typewriter and work on these like series and picture books and stuff. And then we all kind of started writing fiction around the same time, even some other friends too, all started writing fiction around the same time. Oh, hi, the cat's doing the tap thing. She's like, excuse me, you stop petting me. Started writing fiction in, I think it was 2014. A few of us did National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
And that was when I started The Lost Night, which came out in 2019. And kind of ironically, that's when my sister started what eventually she had a manuscript that she abandoned, but that much later she picked up again, and that became The Writing Retreat this year. And in between, she'd written some other manuscripts, and they were literary fiction. So we were on kind of different paths. And her first one did not get published, but her second one she had a agent for and kind of got further along and then didn't get a publishing contract. So that was when she kind of returned to commercial fiction and sort of poured a lot of this frustration with publishing into The Writing Retreat, which is sort of has to do with the publishing industry and the sort of, you know, trials and tribulations of being a writer. but it's been great. We've always like read each other's work, and it's been so awesome seeing all of her hard work kind of pay off, and for other people to discover her brilliance too. And I think our stuff is different, but I think if you like one, you'll like the other. So it's kind of fun to, direct readers from one to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun fact, it was the writing retreat was actually April's book Sleep When I'm Dead book club.
Oh, fun. I'm the second. This is the second Bart's pick.
Yeah. It's definitely the year of the Bart sisters, I guess you can say. Yeah, that was another one that was a book club pick as well. And then I also like I think I didn't like put the pieces together until like right before I read The Spare Room, and I was like, I feel like I'm getting the writing retreat vibes as well. Maybe it's like sister like telepathy, I guess you can say. I don't know. But I was like, I can sense it. Like, so when you said like if you like one, you'll probably like the other. So
yeah, it is kind of funny because I didn't read a draft of the writing retreat until she'd been working on it for years, and she didn't read The Spare Room until it was, finished and had gone through one round of editing. So we didn't, we generally knew what the other person was working on, but hadn't read them. And then it was funny reading the other person's, and like I didn't realize her book was going to be so queer, for example, and like just seeing this overlap of like, oh my God, there's a scene where like in my book XYZ happens too. Yeah. And then also there's just some little details that other friends who know us both well are like, I can tell you grew up in the same household because you both, it'll just be, I don't even know what example it was, but it's like, you both always have like water at the dinner table. Not that, but like some little detail that we both just like assume is normal because that's how we grew up, that like perhaps is not. So that's sort of fun, like Easter eggs for those who want to read the Bart's ooh-wah.
I'm gonna have to look out for that then in the next time I read both of y'all's books. That's interesting. Let's see. What are some challenges that you face as being an author?
Yeah, I mean, the industry is like, I love being a writer. I don't necessarily love all things about being an author because that's the part where it becomes professional, right? Like, I think if you ask any creative person whose passion is their full-time job, they'll have something to say about just the experience of like making it their career and monetizing it. And, I'm lucky I have a really great and supportive editor and agent who sort of, listen to me and respect me and want me to be able to like explore the themes that I want to explore, and aren't saying things like, oh no, your character needs to be more likable or anything like that. But there are still restrictions in terms of them sort of gently guiding me to find that balance between like what I think is interesting and want to like spend the next 2 years writing about, and what they think it will be interesting to other people and like will have broad appeal and will like make sense in the market and sort of be like in line with my brand, which like I don't even totally understand, but like luckily they have some sort of clearer vision of. So yeah, some days it's just really hard to write, and the actual blank page feels so intimidating. And it's again where I wish that I was an outliner and could just move on to the next part of the outline. But instead, I feel sort of like stuck in these dark corners. So that's really hard. And then it's also hard creating a product that, putting something out in the world that just I cannot distinguish myself from. Like it is my heart. It is me. Like what you are reading is, 100,000 words that like came from some deep place in me. And maybe it would be different if I didn't need to go so deep into my own shame, trauma, childhood, whatever. But like, that's just the kind of book I write. So it is hard because I think a dilemma with authors is that we are generally pretty sensitive because that's what makes us writers, right? We're people who like are just taking so much in, and we sort of digest it by writing, and we're observant and we really feel things and we really think about things. But then for all those same reasons, it's so painful when somebody just doesn't like your book, which is inevitable. There's beautiful books that I don't like. There's incredibly well written, amazing art that doesn't resonate with me, and I get that. But especially some professional reviewers are just like the wrong reviewer for the book, or some, someone with a huge bookstagram will tag you in a review that doesn't say it's not for me. It instead says, the writing was painful and the story was awful and da da da. Or they'll email it. People message me to tell me why they didn't like my books. And it's just so, as a sensitive person, it's so hard to sort of not take that criticism personally, because it feels like a criticism to sort of like all of my insides, those sort of like guts that I have put out onto the page. But I don't think I'll ever get a thicker skin, and I'm sort of becoming okay with that, because like the thin skin is what is allowing me to keep writing these books.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you read reviews of your works? Like when we when we interviewed Lucinda Berry, she was like, I don't read any reviews, good, bad. I don't read any of them. Like, I just stay away.
Interesting. Good for her. So I read professional reviews. I mean, my publicist sends me professional reviews, and I kind of need to know what those say. Mm-hmm. And if I'm tagged in something, I'm human. So of course I read it, or at least see it. But yeah, it's really just, and then people sometimes tag me in really nice reviews, which is so kind and lovely and appreciated. But I never, like, Goodreads is not for authors. Goodreads is for other people. It's for other readers to share their own opinions. And I totally respect that. So I don't read it. And I will also ask the marketing team for my book, like, can you give me a sense of what's going on? Like before the book comes out, when people are getting arcs and stuff, I'll kind of ask them generally, like, what are you hearing at this point? And actually, we ended up sort of changing the marketing for the Spare Room, because the early feedback, which again, I didn't personally look at, but they sort of synthesized for me, was that it was being marketed sort of as a thriller, which it's really not. It's domestic suspense. It's a little bit slower, quieter, really relationship focused. And then also it wasn't clear enough. And I was sort of like, I told you this and you ignored me. It wasn't clear enough from the marketing copy that it's a very sexy book. And so some people were giving it lower ratings because they were just like, oh my God, I was not expecting any of this. Like, this is not what I'm here for. Mm-hmm. So we had to sort of change the marketing, the language to just better set up expectations. Mm-hmm. So I am fully aware of how my books are being received, but I don't personally need to take it. There's only so much I can take in of the negative stuff, so I don't go seeking it out.
Yeah, you're never going to please everyone.
Right. Like, who is writing these books that everyone likes? Sometimes to make myself feel better, I'll go to books I absolutely love on Goodreads, like Gone Girl. I think Gone Girl is a perfect book. Yes, cliche. I don't care. I think it's perfect and incredible. And I will go to the Goodreads page and I will click on 1 star, and some people just hate it. Yeah. And you know what? That's great. If you can write Gone Girl and still get 1 star reviews, like, you got to just soldier right on.
Yeah, I did a video on my channel of like reacting to 1 star Goodreads reviews of like some of my favorite books.
Oh, and I love it.
Yeah, and it's like hilarious because most of the 1 star reviews were talking about all of the things that were like my favorite things about the book.
Yeah. So. Great. Well, I think that's true, because it's like the things that you as an author do that really make your books like different or evocative, or, bringing up questions, making people uncomfortable, like all of that's like your strengths are often the things that are going to turn some people off. Mm-hmm. And so in a way it means you're doing something right, but it doesn't feel that way when I get the email telling me how annoying Kelly is. People, you are so welcome to your opinion, but you don't need to go ruin an author's day by sending it, jettisoning it directly to them.
Right, yeah.
People are just ruthless, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Well-meaning, but.
All right. One of Jesse's favorite questions.
Love this question.
So if you could describe the Spare Room in 3 words, what would those be?
I would go with sexy, twisty, and queer. What do you think? Do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah. Okay. I think the first word that comes to mind for me is like salacious.
Ooh.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah.
I think it was Shondaland that called it delightfully salacious. And I was like, yes.
Yeah. For my book club, I always have my co-host pick the book. I never pick my own book club books. I always like give them kind of free range and like we talk about it. And Zoe actually picked this one, and I was like, let me read what it's about because it was on my radar, but I never read the synopsis. It's like, ooh, I love thrillers that have a good romantic, sexy element to it. And I was like, this is, yeah. So like domestically sexy is what I would say. If I
Ooh, domestically sexy. Yeah, that's what we were going for. Yeah, I had to like figure out how to write romance for this book, which was, if I always had respect for romance authors, but like, oh my God, their job is so hard. It was so hard. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah, like I thought writing thrillers was hard because of sort of like the puzzle element, but
Yeah.
like it is nothing compared to the romance element of like, and then I had to do it with 3 people, which was stupid. But like trying to like capture the, you know, emotional experience of like
Mhm.
someone, and it's like this balance of like interiority and like you know, a touch and flirting and
Mhm.
dialogue, and it was so hard.
But
Yeah.
rewarding at that because I mean, I mean personally, I think it was a great book. So I loved like seeing that
Thank
because
you.
I love when my two favorite genres collaborate. So that's personally my favorite.
Yeah, well, especially since like romance can get a little bit formulaic, right? Which there's, you know, which is not a bad thing at all. But then you take something that is typically very formulaic and you put it into like a domestic suspense, and so it kind of changes the narrative a little bit. So then
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you have something that's usually formulaic, but then you're kind of changing the formula and making it fit into something else. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely different.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, I felt like most domestic suspense is like it's great, but it's so focused on like this one
Mhm.
already existing hetero couple, right? And it's not
Mhm.
about them falling in love. It's not about the sex. It's like, oh, you know, they seem to have the perfect marriage. Now the dog needs to be inside too. Hello. It's like they seem to have the perfect marriage, or it's like the
Mhm.
jealous, you know, ex-wife or the mistress or the widow or the missing kid or whatever. Like it's already about the sort of like existing family unit.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think we need more. I think we need more queer domestic suspense, and I think we need more queer romance too. So let's put it all together.
Yeah. Awesome. Love that. So this one was so this book club member doesn't know that I took one of their questions. But it's actually from Brandon, who always has great questions. But he said this book takes place during isolation/quarantine. The main characters are all together as a pod. If you could choose a celebrity to have in your pod, who would you choose and why?
I really had to think about this because I like don't care about celebrities at all. Like just like celebrity culture does not, for whatever reason, appeal to me at all. Um, and I was like, should I go with a really incredible musician like Beyonce so I could like watch her creative process or something, or like another author? And then I finally was like, oh, Kesha. It's obviously Kesha. Because she's so cool, right? Like we would totally be friends. She doesn't know it yet, but we would totally be friends. And she's, you know, an artistic genius and just like a very smart and funny and interesting person. So it's funny. I'm not even like a diehard Kesha fan or anything, but I was like, yeah, we'd have a good time.
Yeah.
And she'd bring all the glitter with her.
Yeah.
Glitter, that we would find a way to have a great time. Awesome.
I love that. Good answer. Good answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that one. All right. Out of the 3 main characters, Kelly, Sabrina, and Nate, which one did you spend the most time developing? You've spoken to this a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had to spend a long time developing all of them. And I guess this isn't quite what you asked, but I think Sabrina was the one that it sort of took me the longest to figure out.
Okay.
Because, you know, I was telling the story from Kelly's perspective, and from Kelly's perspective, Nathan and Sabrina are just like these beautiful, and they really are. They're like these beautiful, glamorous, smart, talented, interesting, generous, rich people that just seem so like shiny and cool. But you know, beneath every cool girl, beneath every like cool person, there's always more. And I feel like I like kind of quickly figured out like Nathan's deal and how he sees the world and sort of his, you know, moral compass and life philosophy and all that pretty quickly. But Sabrina, I think part of what is so appealing is that she's sort of like a cipher. She's sort of like enigmatic. And but at a certain point I was like, well, I as the author need to understand her, even if, you know, she's sort of a tough nut to crack. So I think it took me the longest, just via writing and via dialogue and via scenes that got cut and stuff that's not even in there anymore. It took me the longest to kind of figure out like how she approaches things, because it's important for me to be able to go through every scene and understand what every character is bringing into that scene and like how they're reading it, because it's going to be different. Like everyone is the protagonist of their own story, right? So they can't just be sort of these like paper dolls that are, you know, moving around Kelly. They need to all have their own autonomy, even if that's not the story we're hearing.
I love that. I was actually surprised. I mean, I think just because you mentioned Kelly earlier, but like that makes sense with Sabrina. I feel like she was kind of that tougher cookie to like, yes.
Yeah.
So a little fun fact with me and Lena, we have a group chat with our we call each other the Fab Five or whatever, and so it's like it's 5 total YouTubers, and we've met in person and everything. But we always do a question of the day. I feel like I'm mostly the one that comes up with the questions. But we've actually had this question before in the past, and this question actually got brought up from page 73 in your book, chapter 14, and it is. One of your characters, I believe it's Nate, asked, like, what is a compliment that you love to receive the most? And so I was just curious, what is a compliment that you love to receive?
Yeah, it's funny. I included that because it had come up in on a group Zoom, like somebody else. It's sort of one of those, like, you hear it and then you want to like keep extending it. So somebody else had asked it on a friend Zoom, and I had sort of like drawn a blank. I sort of had answered like Kelly and been, you know, like, well, that I'm kind, I'm generous. And somebody pointed out like, well, everything you're saying is about like how other people feel. And then the book came out and people like you have started asking me the question. And I'm like, well, shit, I never like really came up with a new answer. But I think, you know, I had to think about it again. I think I'm going to go with, I guess the compliment or feeling confident myself that I am brave, that like the compliment of like the thing that I'm doing is the brave choice. Whether somebody else observes that of me or whether I could like say, you know, think that about myself. So I'm going to go with brave. I don't know. What about you guys?
Oh my gosh. I think my favorite personally, and I think Lena's like you are, so don't like a good compliment. I love to make people laugh. Like I'm always the one to like crack a joke and stuff like that. So I love when people tell me I'm funny. So, but what was your answer, Lena? I forgot.
I love it when people tell me I have it all together. That like Lena, like we know Lena's got it under control. Like we don't need to worry about Lena. She's got it. She's got it under control. That like that fills my cup. Yep, I've got it. Everything's chill. Everything's under control.
Yeah.
Even if in here it's not on the outside, as long as it looks like it.
Right. The impression that you are giving indicates. That's great. I love that.
All right. So if the spare room were turned into a movie, who would be your dream cast?
Yeah. Let's see if I blank. I wrote it down because I was like, I don't want to draw a blank again when I'm talking about this. Well, Sabrina's described as having a angular Frank Lloyd Wright face. So I was always picturing someone. I don't really picture celebrities, but I was picturing somebody who looks like Carly Shaken, who is best known for being on Mr. Robot as the sister.
Okay.
I think she's like stunningly gorgeous, but like very angular and sort of striking. And then for Kelly, she's described as sort of like petite. She's like all American blonde, cute. So I was thinking maybe Florence Pugh, but then today I was like, oh, maybe actually Chloe Grace Moritz. She's a little young, but like, couldn't you kind of see that? And she's such a actress. And then, okay, who's at the door now? I didn't even know you. Okay, I didn't even know you left, Mama. Now she wants to be back. It's the cat. Now I've got them both. And then the hardest one is Nathan. I also just like don't know that many male celebs, but he has like hot nerd energy in my mind. Like he's like he's more cute than handsome. So I was thinking maybe Joshua Peck. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you guys see any celebrities in your minds? Any actors?
For me, for Kelly, I mostly saw Florence Pugh. Like so when you was like, oh yes, okay, I got that right. And then with like Sabrina and Nate, I didn't really picture anyone in particular, but I did get like Florence Pugh like vibes as well. Cause I just recently like watched oh my gosh, the movie with Harry Styles, the one that just came out not too long ago.
Oh,
Don't Worry, Darling. That's what it was. I like had recently watched that before reading this, and I was like picturing her in my head. So it's funny that you also said Florence Pugh. So bonus points for me.
I love it. I love it.
For Sabrina, I also see a little bit of like Brittany Snow.
Oh, maybe. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like somebody super charming. Somebody else told me that they had just finished season 2 of White Lotus. And oh my gosh, I'm gonna blank on her name. But the beautiful blonde, if she dyed her hair, the beautiful blonde. Did you guys watch season 2 of White Lotus?
I haven't.
Well, actually, I think I need to Google this while I'm talking to you.
Yeah, let me look it up.
She's so incredibly charming that I was like, oh, she doesn't look like I was picturing, but like I get it. Like whatever she was telling you to, you would just want to be in her world.
Sydney Sweeney? Sydney Sweeney?
No, Megan Fahey.
Although I do love Sydney Sweeney. I think she's gorgeous.
It's incredible and such a good actress. No, Megan Fahey. I don't actually know how you say her last name, but she was also
okay.
Like you just can deliver a line where you're like you're just like lost in her, whatever she's telling you, you're just like in it. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
But she doesn't have that like necessarily angular look. But when that person said that's who they were picturing, I was like, no, I get it. She's just very charismatic.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Huh.
I think the blonde's kind of throwing me off, but like you said,
no, I know. I'm like, picture her with brown hair, but
yeah. Alrighty. So now we will kind of get into just a few like spoiler questions. So for anyone who has not read the book, I highly recommend that you do that. Leave this, come back and watch the rest of it later. But we'll just go ahead and get into some of the spoiler questions. So for this book, it is about a woman named Kelly, who during the pandemic is kind of going through a difficult situation with her boyfriend and decides to move in with a friend, Sabrina, and her husband, Nate. And then what turns out to just be kind of innocent turns into something much sexier. And then also the possibility that their last partner in their triangle is missing. So I love the aspect. So I know you mentioned a little bit of like as far as like Kelly's perspective and like also like going into like the scenery of like what I guess like the setting and stuff like that. But what else inspired this book for you?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I myself like moved in with a couple, and again, like nothing untoward was happening, but I did think it was interesting how incredibly intimate it was, sort of becoming like a family member of theirs and sharing this really difficult, really scary time together. And it sort of felt like the world outside was sort of terrifying and unknown and scary. And then together we had sort of this like beautiful thing going on inside closed doors, right? So I thought it would be interesting to capture that in kind of a modern Gothic. Like to me, that felt like sort of a Gothic novel, this idea of like, really contained, really what can feel really like exciting and magical, like a manor, can also be sort of claustrophobic and can also be like this whole world. Like there's goods and bads about having your entire world sort of like contained within a house, right? And we all experienced that in the pandemic and in lockdown. So I wanted to capture that and give it a sinister bent. And then, as I also mentioned, I discovered my own bisexuality during the pandemic. And, I think a lot of other people didn't necessarily come out, but switched careers or got a divorce or moved to a whole new city or country or, got back together with an ex. There were so many big life changes that were coming out of this sort of unprecedented opportunity in a way to just like be still and to sort of listen to our inner wisdom. And I know that sounds like a little cheesy or a little heady for what's hopefully ultimately just like a very fun and like twisty read. But I wanted to sort of take those two elements and combine them into what would hopefully be a page turner that also got people thinking.
Nice. And so I guess going back, I guess, again, total spoilers. Let me go ahead and just in case anyone did not leave, this is a spoiler section. But so I know you said like you're a pantser and you're also discovering the twists and turns and things like that. Was there a twist that you were the most shocked about? In particular, no matter how big or small, that you were shocked that your like subconscious came up with that, or anything that changed for that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought Elizabeth was dead. I didn't know who killed her, but I definitely did not think she was alive, let alone like around. And so when I got to that part of the book and she appeared, it was like, so in earlier drafts, it changed. In earlier drafts, she was actually living in the attic, and they had overlapped for a bit. So that was like quite fun to read because it was this like terrifying thing where, the first half of the book, at certain points, she's like hearing footsteps, and that was sort of like gothically inspired. I don't think I've ever talked about this. This is interesting. This is exclusive. And yeah, for a number of reasons, like it just didn't totally narratively work. And so my editor was the one who suggested like, no, I don't think it works for her to already be there. I think Kelly should leave. And then that's the point where she would come. And so I had to change it. But I was writing about these footsteps. I was writing about, like nooks and crannies in this house and things not adding up. And then in that first draft, Kelly like finally got a chance to sort of poke around the mansion on her own when when Sabrina and Nathan finally left. And that was when she like stumbled upon
the
woman hiding in the attic.
And was Sabrina and Nathan keeping her in the attic?
How did it go?
My thriller brain, that's what's happening in my thriller brain. Yeah. Like they had her locked up in the attic.
But they were not keeping, that was her initial reaction, but they were not keeping her. They were like hiding her because she had come back and begged for help. And they were still like believing her. They were still drinking the Elizabeth Kool-Aid. So they were helping her. But her initial thought too was that they'd been like keeping her in the attic, which was also very creepy. I mean, it's obvious where that inspiration came from if you know Gothic literature, but it changed anyway.
Yeah, you were mentioning like when Nathan and Sabrina left, and that's the part that really shocked me was like the one-way mirror, two-way mirror, where like in the closet and like the video camera was like, oh, this is going to be so juicy. So yeah, my jaw hit when that happened. And then of course, like the big reveal in the epilogue was really shocking to me. And I thought it was very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know. I had finished writing the book and I had edited it, and I still was just like, something is missing. Like like I'm okay with a few questions being unanswered. Like anyone who's read We Were Never Here especially knows, like I love kind of leaving it open for discussion. But I was like, this isn't right. Like something's missing. And then I just like sat down and wrote the entire epilogue, and I was like, holy shit, like she's the real Amy Dunn. Like I feel like as you're reading it, you're sort of like, ooh, like is Sabrina like the manipulator who's playing God? And then it's like, ooh, fun. Now like Kelly's the one who's like kind of running the show. And then it's like Elizabeth has been playing everyone.
Yeah. And I think like having it in her point of view was just top notch.
Thank you. It was fun to drop into. I mean, I love writing like a slightly evil or sociopathic character. That was pretty fun. Not that evil and sociopathy are the same things, but it was fun writing that POV for a page or two.
Yeah. Well, I loved that.
It reminded me a little bit of, was it Kristen and We Were Never Here? That was it was the other one. What's the other one?
Emily was the narrator, and then Kristen's the other one.
Kristen. Okay, so it was Kristen. Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. The like the little bit of sociopathic, but like you're not really sure how unhinged this person is, and you're not sure if they even realize that they're unhinged.
Right. And like, who do I believe? And like sort of like shifting alliances. Yeah. Yeah. I love my devilish women. It's, why are women ever allowed to be? Some people read my books because they're kind of all about like friendships and relationships between women. And some people read my books and they're like, I was just tagged in one of these. They're like, I just didn't love that it's about like women being backstabbing and catty. And I'm like, I think you missed the point. Like women,
Right.
We don't get to be unhinged in real life. Like in my books, I want us to be all of the things that men are allowed to be. I want anti-heroes. I want, evil geniuses. But also very, I don't know, realistic and empathetic and interesting characters.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like when men do it, it's crafty. And then when women do it, it's like, oh, they're unhinged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Unhinged, the catty. They're, yeah.
One of the characters I thought was kind of interesting, especially towards the end. And I'm really bad with characters' names, but I think it's the boyfriend, Mike, right? Okay. I feel like his development, especially towards the end and like getting reveals, was very, very interesting. Was that something that, I guess, when you found out that she's not up in the attic, was that something that you had planned, or was that like edited in during like revisions and things like that?
Yeah. So as I was writing the first draft, I still didn't know who done it. Once this woman died, I was like, ooh, it's going to be so unexpected for her to show up and then immediately die. Cause like, it's just something that you don't, I don't know, see done that often. So I was like, okay, that'll be fun and different. But then I had no idea who had done it. And I figured I thought it might be Elizabeth, but I figured it was probably Nathan or Sabrina, or maybe both of them together, because I wasn't sure who to trust. But then as I was writing it, is when, I mean, ultimate of spoiler, like, please stop now if you haven't. But yeah, as I was writing it is when I decided, it just suddenly like snapped into place one day where I was like, oh my God, what if Mike did it? And I had done some work already, like that, like I was saying about your subconscious sort of putting down the breadcrumbs. I'd done some work about his sort of emotional, I don't know, irregularity and sort of his like lack of emotional regulation, which was just part of their relationship. Because I think that's actually a pretty common kind of codependent thing where one person, often the woman, is sort of like doing the work of emotionally regulating both of them, because men aren't taught to do it in the same way, and like affect regulation and all that. So I already had some of that, and I had to crank it up a lot. In the first draft, he was still at, like, she figured out that it was him, and he was still hanging around at the mansion in Tanglewood. And so the big blowout happened there. And for logistical reasons, I ended up changing it, and it felt more realistic he would get the hell out of there right away. But yeah, I had to go back and do a lot of layering to have it feel earned and not a surprise. But also, I mean, for me, the mark of a good twist is that like 1 out of every 10 readers is going to guess it. And to them, it's going to feel really obvious because they guessed it. But I need 1 out of 10 to, if fewer than that are getting it, then I didn't seed it well enough for it to really land.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions, and then so I always, since recently with interviewing authors, I love like reading the dedication. And you wrote, for anyone who rethought everything. Any insight on your dedication for that, like in particular?
Yeah, I felt like during the pandemic, I rethought everything. I shed so much of like what I thought were my own sort of truest, deepest desires, and then began to recognize that they actually were sort of external and were coming from, all sorts of things, including my, Christian, conservative, suburban, heteronormative upbringing in Milwaukee, from the way that, my friends saw me, from just the ways that I had like sort of labeled myself and the identity I forged. And I, like I said before, I was sort of grateful in a way, even though the pandemic was awful in most ways, I was grateful for that opportunity to rethink things. And so I wanted to, just sort of like give a shout out to everyone else who had the bravery to reinvent themselves and like sort of rethink their identity. Because it takes, I think, some bravery to do it when you're not, an experimenting college kid or something anymore. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then lastly, any upcoming writing plans or projects that you would love to share if you're able to?
Yeah, so I am working on book 5 right now. I am deep in the mess of it. I'm definitely in that point that I I told you about, where I am staring at the ceiling going like, what have I done? How is this going to come together? But it's a lot of fun. It is, what can I say? It's about a woman who, a year after her fiance died while on a solo-cation on an island off Mexico, a year after that death, like travels to the island to sort of like commemorate it and say goodbye, and falls in with a group of expats there. But as she like sort of infiltrates this clique and gets to know them better, she starts to question whether her fiance's death was actually an accident, the way that if it actually went down the way that she had thought. She's uncovering stuff about them, about the island, about her fiance, and about herself. And it's twisty, and it's again like in a lush tropical setting, which is really fun. It's back to that like insular little world of a friend group. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun writing it.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to look out for it.
Yeah, coming at you in 2025. You've got some time.
Okay. I will definitely keep that on my radar. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that.
Book club picks. There we go.
Might be another future book club pick. So, especially if it's like tropical, that would be perfect for summer too. So, but yeah, all right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Unless Lena, do you have anything that you can think of off the top of your head?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for being flexible, but also like attending and answering all my silly questions. But thank you so much. I'm sure all of my book club members and all my subscribers and viewers are going to be so excited to watch this video. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me on, and thank you so much for the thoughtful questions and the great discussion. Like I loved talking to you, and just thank you too to all of the book club members. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your spending your very precious and limited time reading The Spare Room. So I hope something in it resonated or felt true to you.
Yeah.
And where can people find you if they don't already have you like on social media?
Yeah, great question. I'm on Instagram and now Threads and sort of Twitter, maybe not by the time, who knows, at Andy Bartz, ANDIBARTZ. There's my name. And then my website is andreabartz.com. And I would love to hear from people. Come hang.
Yeah, definitely. I'm planning on posting this before our full group discussion and everything. So I'll definitely send you a copy of everything. And like, yeah, I'm just so excited to like not only discuss the book with everybody, but also like surprise them with this. So hopefully they're very as shocked and surprised as we are about the book as well too. So, but
thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for reading it and for getting in touch. I was really happy to connect with you.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I'll go ahead and end recording now. But yeah, everyone, the book club discussion is going to be live with me and Zoe on October 23rd, 2023 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, all that fun stuff. So make sure you check out Discord. The link will be in the description box. That's where we talk about the book club picks and all the fun things coming up all month long. And yeah, I'll go ahead and end recording now, but thank you so much.
Thank you.